All right, today we're diving into a technology that is completely rewriting the rules of ownership. It's called tokenization. We're going to see how it can turn basically everything from giant skyscrapers to those brilliant world-changing ideas into digital assets that you can trade on a blockchain. So let me just start by asking you this. What if you could own just a tiny piece of a skyscraper in Manhattan, or maybe a single brushstroke of a famous masterpiece? Or what if you could own a share of a patent for some life-saving drug? And look, this isn't some far-off sci-fi fantasy. This is the actual promise of tokenizing real-world assets. And this right here, this perfectly captures the massive shift we're talking about. Traditionally, big assets like real estate are what we call illiquid. They're super hard to sell, and the price to even get in the game is huge. The whole process is slow, it's expensive, it's just bogged down with paperwork. Tokenization completely flips that on its head, promising a world that is liquid, open to everyone, and, well, pretty much instant. Okay, so how are we going to break this all down? Here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the problem with asset ownership as it is now. Then we'll see how tokens are unlocking these assets. We'll explore how we can tokenize basically anything, even ideas. Then we'll get into the payoff, why this all matters. We'll cover the very real risks and hurdles. And finally, we'll take a look at what the future holds. All right, let's jump right into part one, the asset ownership problem. Why is it so ridiculously hard for the average person to invest in some of the most valuable things all around us? Well, the old way of doing things has some pretty big roadblocks. The most obvious one is the high barrier to entry. You need a ton of money to buy a building, right? And that directly leads to restricted liquidity, because finding just one person who can afford a multi-million-dollar asset can take months, sometimes even years. And the ownership itself is usually indivisible. You can't just sell off your kitchen to get a little extra cash. It's just a slow, complicated process completely wrapped up in red tape. So, what's the fix? Let's get into how technology is providing the key to unlock all of this trapped value. The answer is this thing called tokenization. And at its core, it's really simple. It's the process of converting the rights to a real-world asset into a digital token that lives on a blockchain. The best way to think about it is like this. It's like taking a massive physical building and turning it into thousands of digital stock shares that anyone can easily buy and sell. So how does this actually work? What are the steps? Well, it's actually a pretty straightforward four-step process. First, you pick an asset and figure out what it's worth. Second, you design and create the digital token using what's called a smart contract, which is really just a bit of code that runs itself. Third, the tokens get issued or minted, and finally, they're sold to investors and can be traded on digital exchanges, just like you would trade stocks. But here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't just for concrete and steel. Let's see how this exact same technology is being applied to the world of ideas. This is the part that can kind of break your brain a little. The same process that can carve up a skyscraper into tiny, affordable pieces can also be used to unlock the value that's been locked away in intellectual property. We're talking about things like patents, music copyrights, and trademarks. And believe it or not, this stuff is happening right now. You've got huge players like IBM working on tokenizing patents. Artists are using platforms like Token Tracks to sell shares of their future royalties to fund their next album. And we've all seen how this model has been proven with digital art and in gaming, where tokenization lets creators fund their projects and gives fans a real way to invest in the things they love. Okay, so we know what it is and how it works. But what's the actual payoff here? Why should you or I even care about any of this? Well, for starters, let's just look at this number, $16 trillion. That's the projected size of the market for tokenized assets by 2030. That's not just some small niche market. No way. That is a fundamental reshaping of global finance. And the benefits are pretty huge. You get enhanced liquidity because you're breaking down these massive assets into small, easily tradable pieces. This democratizes investing. It opens the door for so many people who were previously locked out. Everything is transparently recorded on the blockchain for everyone to see. And it massively improves security. Think about this. After the 2010 earthquake in Haiti, decades of physical land registry records were just gone. A decentralized permanent ledger prevents that kind of catastrophic loss from ever happening again. And check this out. This shows you the money, literally. By cutting out the middlemen, one report estimates that tokenization could save the equity trading market alone about 4.6 billion euros every year by 2030.
That kind of efficiency means more value stays where it belongs, in the hands of the buyers and sellers.
Okay, but let's be real for a second. This is not some magic wand that fixes everything. To get the whole picture, we absolutely have to talk about the very real risks and hurdles that are still in the way. And yeah, there are some serious hurdles to jump. For one, regulation is still playing catch up, and the laws are completely different from country to country. The tech itself has risks, from network slowdowns to hard to fix bugs in the code. Security is a massive concern. If you lose your private keys, poof, your asset is gone. And of course, the markets for these new assets can be incredibly volatile. So, even with all those challenges, what's next? Well, the entire focus of the industry is making a really fascinating pivot. According to folks who watch this market, we are at a critical pivot point. The industry has already proven it can create tokens. That part's done. The new, much harder challenge is creating deep, active, and continuous liquidity for them. It's one thing to make a token, it's a whole other ballgame to make sure people can actually buy and sell it easily and at any time. This quote from Sheena Lim, the CEO of One Exchange, really says it all. The new yardstick for success isn't just about launching a new token anymore. It's about whether that token can keep up a healthy trading volume long after that initial sale is over. So to make that happen, the industry is basically building a whole new set of financial plumbing. This includes things like programmable trust, which means building the compliance rules right into the asset's code. It means instant on-chain settlement that just gets rid of those annoying delays. And it requires token mobility, letting these digital assets move around the world freely and safely between different blockchains and financial hubs. And all of this brings us to one final huge question. We're heading towards a future where almost any asset, tangible or not, can be turned into a liquid, tradable token that just about anyone can access. The technology is setting the stage, so the real question becomes, what will we choose to own next?